So that's my situation. And in fact, that's the situation of anybody that's stopped under Schedule 7. There's no suspicion required. You can just be detained. Your rights can be taken away from you, even though you're not suspected of a crime.
For many, the right to privacy is a tightly held value. But would you be prepared to go to prison to protect your passwords? A case in the UK has shown that not giving them up to police could be enough to convict you under terror laws. The advocacy group CAGE campaigns against the impact of counter-terrorism policies, and now the director has been snared by them. Mohammed Rabbani was found guilty of obstructing a police search after he refused to hand over the passwords to his phone and laptop. Schedule 7 of the Terrorism Act allows officials to stop and search people to determine whether they're preparing a terrorist attack. Rabbani says he was protecting the privacy of a client. To his supporters, he's a modern-day human rights hero who stood up to an unjust law. But British police say these laws are necessary to combat terrorism. Well, I'm joined now by the newsmaker himself, CAGE's International Director, Mohammed Rabbani. Mohammed, good to have you on the Newsmakers. I understand you're on conditional discharge. This got you into a lot of trouble, not wanting to give up your passwords. Obstructing police, that was the conviction. Was it worth all the trouble? Was it worth all the defiance, given that you're going to go to jail and they're going through your stuff anyway?
Thank you for having me here. It was very much worth it. From the outset, many months ago, upon arrest, I took the decision right there that it was the right thing to do. I have to do my very best, all that is within my power, to ensure that I protect the trust of those who've entrusted information, confidential information to me. So at that time, I was willing to risk 3 months in prison for this, in the interest of those torture survivors, but also in the interest of principle. So I'm quite happy actually with the outcome. We've won the moral victory, we've done the ethical thing, and I think all those who are in court would agree that it was the law that was the problematic issue in this case.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so you have a problem with Schedule 7 and not just the implementation of Schedule 7?
Yeah, Schedule 7 is a problem at a very, very fundamental way, because it operates without any suspicion, which means it's a power that actually operates outside of what we call the rule of law or due process rights. Normally, if your liberty is to be taken away from you or your basic rights are to be deprived, there has to be a suspicion at least, if not evidence and charges made against a person. Schedule 7 operates completely without this safeguard, and therefore it's a very, very problematic power.
Do you believe that there was zero suspicion when it comes to the fact that you're a director of CAGE, and CAGE has had, you've used the word problematic, has had a problematic relationship with the government in recent times?
No, not at all. Actually, suspicion is in relation to criminal activity. There's no suspicion against CAGE or me. In fact, it was admitted to and confirmed by 3 police officers in open court. There was no suspicion against myself. And as for CAGE, CAGE is not a problem either. The police have had no interest in CAGE. The police have never investigated CAGE or accused us of anything. In fact, they've actually made appointments with us, come to our office, and discussed many issues together around the table. CAGE is a problem for, however, the Home Office and also the neoconservatives who are propelling a particular narrative which promotes war abroad and also discriminatory and oppressive policies in the Western countries, including the UK.
Okay, so let me separate this out, right? So we'll talk about CAGE in a second, but at the time, do you regret maybe being uncooperative with the police officer? Given that in court, you know, they said that you refused to tell officers what you did for a living, telling them it won't help you in any way. You said you had a right to privacy, which of course you do. PC Tariq Chowdhury, who conducted the search, said, quote, "I asked him questions about his occupation. He said he was a director of a company but wouldn't go any further. He kept saying you don't need to and it won't help you in any way." And then perhaps they Google search you and they find that you're the director of CAGE. Now, with that in mind, do you regret not being cooperative with them at that moment in time? Why didn't you just say, hey, I'm a director of Cage?
Yeah, actually, in open court, all 3 police officers confirmed that they had full knowledge I was the director of Cage before they even stopped me.
Right.
And therefore, that's not the issue. The issue is that they were asking for my passwords, and I refused on the principled reason that I cannot hand over information that belongs to someone else without their consent.
Okay, so when we say suspicion, now again, I'm not suggesting criminal activity here. I'm trying to get into their minds a little bit here, trying to understand the zeitgeist, right? So it comes to Cage. We have a history with Mwazi at a time when Boris Johnson, now the Foreign Secretary, then the London Mayor, had called Cage apologists for terror because Asim Qureshi called him a beautiful young man. Mwazi was Jihadi John, who beheaded James Foley in Syria. Cage's website still has a page up for Anwar al-Awlaki, campaigning for him. At the time of death, it was unanimously agreed upon that Awlaki was the head of Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. So with those things in mind, would you accept that the government's keeping an eye on Cage and that you gave them a nice pretext when these guys knew who you were, you come through an airport, and from their perspective, they want to prevent another Mwazi, they want to prevent another terror attack because they feel you might be close to this in some way. And then you say, I don't need to tell you who I work for. And it maybe just aggravates the situation.
Not at all. There's a few hysterical connections that are being made there, so I need to clear some of them up. The ACLU actually defended Anwar al-Awlaki after he was killed in a drone strike, extrajudicially. The headmaster and the employer of Mwazi actually called him a gentleman. It wasn't just Cage. And the leader of her opposition, Her Majesty's opposition, Jeremy Corbyn, has actually been called a terrorist sympathiser. So it's nothing to do with actual the names and the labels. The issue here is it's a legal power, and for the law to operate, it needs to operate lawfully, and it has to be consistent with rule of law. So Schedule 7, as we have been saying for many years, operates outside of those powers. It needs to be brought in line. Safeguards need to be brought in line. Nobody's actually going to argue against having powers to protect national security. This is not what we're saying at all. What we're saying is that those powers need to be very sensible, intelligent, and proportionate. You cannot stop 20,000 people last year and then only arrest 5. That means, who are you stopping? You're stopping innocent people and making their lives a misery. So it's not actually working either. It's actually a useless power. What it's good at is gathering mass intelligence on innocent people going about their daily business, going to holiday or coming back from work.
Very finally, you're going to appeal. What makes you so confident that you'll win?
We're confident because there's actually a growing recognition across the world, not just here in the UK. We have, again, in America, in Donald Trump's America, the ACLU bringing a very powerful legal challenge only 2 weeks ago. And we believe that people are recognizing there's real overreach here happening under the pretext of fighting terrorism. There's actually serious erosion of civil liberties taking place, and people are realizing that we can't have this anymore. So principle is important, morality is important, ethics are important, and the law has to be consistent with those fundamental principles.
Mohammed Rabbani, good to talk to you on the Newsmakers. I thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us, especially given that you're on conditional discharge at the moment. Thanks again.